Hello and welcome. We're going to be talking about ownership in this particular session. And the questions we'll be going over are questions that you may very well see a derivative of that sometime in the future when you're trying to pass your exam in order to get licensed. Because these are excellent concepts. Now understand, please, that there are over 3,000 questions in the database that the algorithm chooses your exam from. And so, for us to say, well, this is the question, we can't do that. But there could be 5 different questions that have the same theme. And if you know the theme, if you know the definition of a word, if you know the concept, you'll get all of them right in whatever varied example that they give you on the test. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. Tonight, also with us is Dan Naylor, our host with the mostest, and he is going to be doing the technical operation of tonight and maybe chime in once in a while if he so desires. I'm Rick Roller, and I'll be your game show host for tonight. And so we're going to start with the very first question, which is about leasehold estates. And so it says, a leasehold estate includes which rights from the bundle of rights? Which rights from the bundle of rights? Okay, what kind of estate? It's a leasehold estate. Now, leasehold estates are not estates in ownership. It's a tenant who has a right to be in a property. So looking over our 4 answers here, does the lease that this tenant has, does it allow them to use it? Does it allow them to transfer the ownership of it? Does it allow them to get a loan on it? Does it allow them to control it? Well, they're somewhat limited on their control. They have a little bit of control, but they're somewhat limited by their document, their lease document that says what they could use it for and how many people can stay there and whatnot. But that's the type of use. And so the most correct answer, the one that you would want to pick, is A, the use. Leasehold estates are all about the use of a property, whether it's commercial or whether it's residential. So if you guessed use, or if you chose use, good for you, because that will give you 1 down and a few more to go. Let's look at number 2, please. Okay, and in this one, we have a tenant who believes that their apartment would be improved by having a deck added to the back. And so, they go to the landlord and they get the landlord to sign an agreement to pay them to install a deck. Now, after the deck is installed, what is the nature of this new improvement on the property? Is it A, the deck belongs to the landlord and they do not need to pay for the installation? They meaning the landlord. No, I mean, he had an agreement for them to build it and to pay them for installing it. So that doesn't sound right. B, the deck belongs to the tenant. Well, forget that. I mean, yeah, there's an improvement that was made, but it's a capital improvement, and it's an improvement that doesn't probably increase the value of the property, maybe even substantially. But they were paid to install that. I mean, and he probably also paid for the materials, or that one doesn't work. See, the deck belongs to the landlord. Oh, that's good so far, but they are obligated to pay the tenant for the installation as they agreed. Now that one sounds really good. Well, it's because it's the right answer. And look at D, the deck belongs to the tenant. Now that does belong to the tenant. They can't rip it down into its component parts to take it with them when they leave. Okay, so the correct answer to this one, of course, to number 2 is C. The deck belongs to the landlord. And of course, the landlord agreed to pay them for the installation. Oftentimes as a landlord, you have very talented tenants that move in, a lot of them from the construction trades. And in this particular situation, the deck probably really did improve the livability of the property. If it had some great views, that it would even be better. But, the tenant went to the landlord. They came to an agreement that, landlord probably supplied the materials and the tenant would actually be paid for putting the deck in, but obviously the deck belongs to the landlord. Let's go to number 3, please. Okay, J has a freehold estate. Now, freehold is ownership. Which of the following is true? Well, let's look at this. A, their interest will end after a specific time limit. Freehold estates are good for an unlimited duration. B, they cannot, therefore, there is no specific time limit. The specific time limit would be like in a lease. Or B, they cannot sell their interest. Well, there's no real restriction. If you own freehold, then you can do a lot of things with it. You can encumber it. You can put tenants in it if you want to. You can sell it. C, they're the landlord. No, they're not the landlord. D, they are free to alienate the property. Now, alienate in this sentence means to sell or transfer. It could be a gift. You can alienate the property by giving it to someone, a child or a favorite nephew or niece or whatever. But they could definitely, if you have freehold, then you can definitely do that. So that's the correct answer. D is in David. Hopefully you got that one. You have to learn what these different words mean. I mean, you don't use the word freehold in your normal conversations. And there's about 300 or 400 of those types of words that you just have to know. So there's a lot of ways you can learn those. And I've got some programs that can help you with that. And we have a lot of information in the school and glossaries and other types of things that can really be helpful with that. Okay, let's look at number 4, please. Now, a leasehold estate, that's less than freehold. It's not ownership. But what is it? Is it an implement? No. If you know what an implement is, that's annual crops or crops that are grown in a year, that they're like harvest. Now, a tree, a cherry orchard, a number of trees would be real property, but the cherries would be an implement. An encroachment, where you're actually built something or encroaching on your neighbor's property. No, it's not that. A contract. Ooh, that sounds pretty good. That's because it's the correct answer. D, a lien. A lien is an encumbrance on a property that has to do with money, and so that's not right either. So the correct answer to this one is it's a contract. Leasehold estate is a contract, giving some rights to a tenant and retaining some rights for a landlord. And you got to understand, and you should buy some rental property in your journey in the real estate business. For one thing, it'll help you with taxes. And the other thing is it's just one of the bonuses. Every different business has bonuses. If you're a travel agent, you get to travel a lot of places and do familiarization trips, and a lot of times that they're free, or at least your stay is free. But in real estate, one of the perks we have is the ability to go out and find great deals. And I remember one time one of my brand new agents came in, they're so excited. They had their first listing and they were just, it was a duplex, and man, it was just great. And the seller just wanted out of it. So they just added the commission to it, and it was a commission down and take over an assumable loan. He brought it in and I said, look, you shouldn't be listing this. You should be buying this. And of course their comment was, well, if I did that, then I won't make a commission. Yeah, that's right. But and neither will we, because we'll back out, as a broker and help you start to accumulate some real estate. But that's one of the perks in our business, and you really ought to do that. Okay. We have classes on that, and you're welcome to call and talk about it anytime you'd like to. Let's look at number 5, please. All right, now we have a landlord that's looking to sell their rental units, which are currently occupied. Now, the buyer wants them to prove that the current leases are in effect and what is the nature of those leases. So what can the landlord give their tenant to sign as proof? Is it a joint lease? No. Security deposit? No, they already did that. Okay, it's an estoppel certificate. C is the correct answer. And it's not just when you're selling properties, it's also when you're refinancing. The bank will lend you money on your properties based on what the cash flow is. And they want to make sure that cash flow is real. And so they'll make you go out and get an estoppel certificate. And you see the word stop in estoppel. That means that the tenant can't come back and claim later, hey, I'm really not paying $2,500 a month for rent. I'm really only paying $1,500. But the landlord asked me to lie. If they signed an estoppel agreement, and that was given to a bank for refinancing or to a buyer, to prove that the rent rolls are correct, that obligates the tenant. Okay, a declaration of intent. That sounds fancy, but it's not the right answer. It's estoppel. Number 6, please. Well, unfortunately, this wife died, and the couple had children, and the husband has an interest in the wife's property. Now, what is the wife's um, property? I mean, she owned it, but the husband has an interest in it. And there's a common laws that have been around forever. Now, is it a remainder interest? No. It's B, curtsy. It's like the wife is curtsying to her surviving spouse. It's not a lease and reversion, and it's not a life estate either. This is an ownership interest. So it's curtsy. Now, a curtsy, like I said, is a common law right, and it's on the male side, it would be a dower. But most states have the Uniform Probate Code now, so that statute would take precedence over these common law concepts. But hey, we're just trying to pass a real estate exam here. If they're talking about dower and curtsy, you better know what they mean, or with how those terms are used. And this is exactly how it'd be used if the wife died. Okay, that was number 6. Now let's look at number 7. Now we have a person that gives a life estate to their friend. Okay. The friend decides to sell the life estate to a third party. What happens when the friend dies? Well, it depends on whose life the life estate was set up on. But if the tenant, the life tenant, dies, okay, if the life estate was based on his life, then let's look real closely here at A. The life estate ends and the estate goes to the remainder man, or reverts to the original owner. Now, remainder man, this person is not the original owner. This is another person down line. And that person, because they are remainder man, gets the ownership interest. Or it could revert back to the original owner. But sometimes these life estates are set up so they're kind of like daisy chained. It might go to another life tenant, and then to a third life tenant, and then to a remainder man, or maybe it just goes to a remainder man. Now, life estates are often on the exam. You don't see them a lot in real life. 45 years I've been doing real estate, and thousands and thousands of transactions. A lot of them were mine, but a lot of them, I've run big offices where you had 125 agents. I mean, we were closing 40, 50, 60 deals, and sometimes the hot months, over 100 deals a month. So, that adds up over time. And I have only seen 2 life estates and all these thousands of deals, but it's usually on the exam. Why? Because, oh man, how could devious exam writers not write questions about these great terms like remainder man and purature v, based on the life of another? So know about life estates, okay? B, C, and D, they're not right. A third party's interest reverts to a freehold estate. No, that's not a third party interest. Now that you can have them end, it could end the life estate, and then it would go, to the remainder man, and that would be an ownership interest. Or C, the estate reverts to the friend's heirs. It depends on how it was set up. Or the estate goes to the friend's spouse as a curtsy. No. Nope. It's A. A is the correct answer. But you got to have a feel for these now, okay? That's why we're going over them now. And that's why we do these classes. And if you have any questions about these, feel free to give us a call. Call us at the school, or you can call me on my private number, which is 801-556-8000. Be happy to help you. And don't fret over this stuff. If you don't understand it, pick up the phone and give me a call. Come on, we'll spend a quality 4 minutes on the phone together, and then you'll understand it. And I'm happy to do that. However, do not call me during the exam itself. Go to number 8, please. That would be cheating. Wish I could just sit there next to you and say A, D, E, C. And we get out of there in a hurry. Okay, when a tenant remains in the property after their lease is expired. Okay, so their lease expired. They're supposed to get out, and they didn't. So what do we have now? Well, it's not a tenancy by entirety. That's, that has a definite termination date. That's what you had, and it expired, and they're still there. They're not supposed to be. A tenancy at will, that's like staying in a motel or a hotel. You check in. Yeah, I'll be here all week. Come down the next morning. Hey, I got a call from home. I got to book on out of here. I've got some emergencies at home. That's a tenancy at will. Although that would work for the hotel too. They could call you up and say, well, uh, the vice president's coming and they wanted the whole floor vacated. The Secret Service did. So you're out of here, but we found you another place to stay, that maybe, whatever. So the tenancy at will works either direction. It is an estate at sufferance. This is the correct answer, because someone's suffering, and hopefully they're still paying a little rent, but they are not honoring their original agreement. And a new estate for years, no, they don't automatically renew. Okay, look at number 9, please, unless there was an automatic renewal clause, which most of them don't do that. Mostly it's in a state that has a definite termination date, and then they may have a provision in the lease that says that it reverts into a month to month. But a lot of them don't. You're just supposed to get out. Number 9, and if you don't, you're a state of sufferance. Number 9, a sale-leaseback is a transaction where a lessor purchases the property that they are leasing. No. B, the property already has an active lease when it's sold. No, that's not it either. C, the buyer of the property buys the property and then leases it back to the original owner. That's it. That's what it is. That's a sale leaseback. And one of the most famous ones was the Sears Tower many years ago, when Sears needed to raise some dough. So they sold their that was part of their logo. So they sold that building, but they didn't vacate it. They just sold to raise the money because they owned the building. They sold it and then they leased it back. That's a sale leaseback. D, the lessor of the property represents the buyer in the purchase of a property. Well, that's, gobbledygook, but it's C. The buyer of the property bought it. That was the sale. And then they lease it back to the original owner. And they're very common. I had one of my students that made a fortune doing those, and he got into business, went straight into commercial, and he had a contact. He had some people that owned a Caterpillar dealerships, and so he went to the one that he knew well, and he did a sale leaseback where he convinced them, look, I have investors that will buy your dealership, the physical buildings, and you can still run your business out of it, and you can lease it back, but you'll raise cash. And some of these properties were worth millions of dollars. And so, that Caterpillar dealer, he'd go buy a new jet, and then all those other buddy Caterpillar dealers across America would say, well, where'd you get the jet? Well, I did a sale leaseback. And he did about 6 or 8 of them across America. Really smart guy. And he didn't buy a jet. He bought a turboprop. Look at, well, kind of like a jet. A 10, Pilatus, great plane. Tenancy and severalty. Now that sounds like there's several of you. Okay, is it sole separate ownership? Yeah, that's it. A is the correct answer. 2 owners as joint tenants? No, tenants and severalty means that it's a sole owner, like one. You're severed, you're cut away from everybody else. 2 owners as joint tenants, that's a whole different thing. Several owners as joint tenants, and 2 or more at their tenants in common, that has nothing to do with sole ownership, sole separate ownership. So the correct answer to number 10 is A. S and S, okay? Severalty sounds like there's several of you, but it's more severed. You're severed, you're cut away from everyone else. And that, hey, that's on the hit parade. You're probably going to see that sometime when you're sweating it, taking a multiple choice exam on a computer. Number 11, please. Now, these questions, like I said in the beginning, are not exact replicas, but they're very helpful. Number 11, if 2 people take ownership of a property at the same time and they have equal interest in the property, equal possession, and equal title, what are they? Well, that's really the definition of C, joint tenants. You have to have the 4 unities in order to do joint tenants, which is the answer C. It's not tenants in common. Tenants in common is a situation where you could have come into ownership at different times. I mean, you had 3 partners. One of your partners decided to sell his third interest out to someone else. Or the interests are different. One guy owns half and the other 2 own 25% each. Tenancy at will, that's like staying in the hotel, and tenants at sufferance is when you have a holdover tenant. It's joint tenants. That is pretty much the definition of joint tenancy. And of course, you knew that because you're good students. Let's look at number 12. If you don't know it, you know it now. Okay, let's look at number 12. When multiple unmarried persons purchase a property together as tenants in common and share size is not specified, how do we divide up the shares? Well, if there's 4 owners and they're taking it all as tenants in common, then what the law will surmise, because it doesn't define it, is that they're equal shares for each owner. So they'd be 25% each. 3 owners, 33 and a third, that kind of thing. The oldest doesn't, the oldest gets the largest share. What's it have to do with anything? Nothing. So the correct answer is A. Divided by the amount of money invested, that does it probably not defined in the deed. Divided by the size of your family. Okay, well, then I'd have a bigger interest than most of you. All right, but no, that's not true. It's A, equal shares for each owner. Now, it's tenants in common, so it doesn't have to be equal shares. But if it's not defined in the agreement, then the courts and anybody else looking at is just going to assume that it's all divided up equally. If it was unequal, they should have defined it. Number 13. Okay, in this one, we have joint tenants wish to separate their tenancy so that each individual owner has separate ownership. Now, you were a joint tenant. See, the thing about joint tenants is it has that right of survivorship. And so what happens in a joint tenancy is if one of the owners died, and there could be 3 owners, 5 owners, whatever, but if one of them died, then their share immediately goes to the other owners. And most commonly, the joint tenancy is used by couples. And so, the 50% share would go to the surviving individual or spouse. But you don't have to be married to be joint tenants either. A joint tenancy could be mom and a daughter, or dad and a son or whatever. But if you want to divide that up later, what do you do? Well, you're going to have to record some. If it's amicable and everyone agrees, you just create a deed. But if it's not, then you're probably going to end up in a partition suit, a lawsuit to divide up the properties. So it'd be a B, a suit of, a partition suit or a suit to partition. Okay, it's not constructive eviction. That's for tenants. Okay, that's a whole different thing. What happens is constructive eviction is kind of a tenant right. Landlords, particularly residential properties, there's a requirement that property needs to be habitable. And if the landlord is not keeping it habitable, if the roof's been leaking and now you got buckets all over the house catching the water dripping down, and or the furnace goes out and they don't fix it, and it's winter, all these different things, then a tenant can just pack up and leave. I don't care if they have a remaining lease or not, because it's called constructive eviction. Suit to revert, no. A set off, no. It's a partition suit or a suit to partition or separate the owners on the property. Doesn't happen, but I bet, well, a lot of things don't happen that often, you see on the exam, but nevertheless could happen. And if it does, then there's something you ought to know. Which brings up another issue, and that is you never stop learning in real estate, guys. I mean, yeah, you're going to go and you're going to pass the test, but about 2 months after you pass the test, you've forgotten about 65% of the material. Maybe more. So you have to keep studying. And I strongly recommend that you get in and take your 12-hour new agent class immediately. Your first month into business, just get it out of the way. because it'll teach you some of the practical aspects, particularly if you come to my class. It's a blatant commercial plug. Number 14. Does a condominium owner have fee simple ownership or common ownership? Well, actually, they have both. They have fee simple ownership of the interior of their space, and usually it goes from the common walls inward, and of course they have all that interior. But then they also have joint ownership of the land underneath, and sometimes the recreational pools and other properties, common areas. So they actually have both. They have fee simple ownership of their condo space, and then they have common ownership in the rest of the property, including the land underneath it. It's kind of a hybrid thing, and it's cool. It's very popular, and especially as prices have gotten, well, a little pricey. A lot of people are buying condos or townhouses. Let's look at number 15, please. Okay, an owner in a co-op owns. Okay, what do they own? If you have a co-op, and sometimes these are called stock co-ops, but if it's a co-op, it's a different animal. It's not a condominium, and it's certainly not a townhouse. And because what happens is, and they're very popular in New York. You have a lot, some of the older big cities like Chicago and that kind of thing. But what it is they actually they have a proprietary lease. Correct answer is B. It's not the airspace in their unit. That's getting into more like a condo. On a stock co-op, they could be very selective on who actually could buy in that unit, because what you're buying is a lease, and you buy stock in the entity that owns the whole building, and that gives you the right to lease your unit. It's not a deed to their unit, and it's not real estate. They're actually, well, that's why they're called a stock co-op. But that would give the answer away, so they didn't use that in the question. Okay, look at number 16, please. Okay, which of the following is a contract? Okay, well, this should be simple. It's definitely A. That is the correct answer. But an encroachment is where you built something on your neighbor's property, or you put the fence on your property, or whatever. That's not a contract. An estate could be transferred with a contract and whatnot, but that's not a contract either. That's an ownership interest. And D, a comparative market analysis. That's what we do when we're trying to get a listing and come up with a price for them, a competitive market analysis. So the correct answer to 16 is A. It's of these potentials. It's a lease, and sometimes they're called lease contracts. Okay, let's look at number 17, please. Okay, a tenant wants to have an easy to budget lease payment. That's the same every month during the entire length of the lease. So what kind of lease would they prefer? Would it be a gross, net, percentage, or graduated lease? Well, I can throw out graduated, because that means the lease actually takes jumps in the price. They want it to be the same every month, the entire length of the lease. Throw that out. Percentage lease, throw that out, because percentage leases used a lot in retail, used a lot in restaurants, but they pay a base rent, and then they pay a percentage of their gross sales. Now, a net lease is a situation where the money they pay the landlord is the same, but then they also pay all the expenses. Now, they don't want that either, because they want their expense, their payment, their budget to remain the same. So what we're looking at is a gross lease. A gross lease is a contract where they pay a gross amount, and then the landlord pays all the expenses to run the building. And most commonly, that's a residential type property. But not always. Sometimes it could be a commercial property as well. But a gross lease, it's going to be a set figure every month. If you're paying monthly, for that property till the lease expires. Okay. So a little thinking has to go into some of these questions, but you can do this. But you can only do this if you put some study and effort into it. Don't walk into that test and without really putting some effort into it. Now, thoughts to live by as we close up our little session that you're watching at this time. And this is an epigram from Forbes, and it says, to prosper, prepare. This usually costs sweat. To prosper in real estate, you need to prepare, and this will usually cost sweat. In other words, you got to work. And we're entering into a very interesting time in real estate as we do this class and put it together. It's going into the holiday season. Thanksgiving is just a few days away in 2022, and the market is retracing a little bit. Prices are coming down a little bit. Sales have slacked off a little bit. And some agents are saying, oh my gosh, we're entering into a down market. And yeah, we are. And real estate in Utah has always been in cycles. And usually it used to be 8-year cycles. But the cycle we have been in, where the prices just gone up and up and up and up and up, and we still had bidding wars and people were paying more than the list price to get a property and whatnot. Those times, are gone. And we're entering into a time, one of my title company friends tracks foreclosure notices, which is a notice of default. And in the hot market we have been in, we had about 50 to 100 a month, but this last month we had 650 foreclosure filings, notices of default. So what does that tell you? Well, it tells you that some people have lost their jobs, some people have lost their businesses for one reason or another, and people really need your help now. And so whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, we're entering into a buyer's market. It doesn't matter. It's a realtor's market always. We just take our 6-7% off the top, okay? Or if you negotiate further down, that's up to you too, if that's part of your business plan. But it's going to be a great time. I've always done better in down markets. And, because if you're a great agent and you know what you're talking about and you know how to market properties, it's a great time to get into the business. This last go around, when we went through from 06 to about 08, I was on the board of directors for the Salt Lake Board of Realtors. And we lost half our membership. We went from 8,000 to 4,000 agents, which was fine, because the ones that remained, we all made more money. And in really tough times, people know it's tough times. In great times for sellers, the sellers know anybody can sell their house. But just put up a sign, you'll get 10 offers, right? And there'll be a bidding war besides. But in slower times where it's a buyer's market, sometimes it takes months to sell a house. So they want to only work, they don't list with their Uncle Bob, who's a part-timer and, doesn't know what he's doing. They list with hard-hitting agents that know what the heck they're talking about, and you can do that part-time if you're really good. But it's a great time to get into real estate. This is the kind of market I started in back when we had President Carter in the late 70s, and then we got President Reagan. But politics aside, the economy goes in cycles. But remember, buyer's market, seller's market, hey, it's always a realtor's market. Come join us in this market. It's going to be great, and we wish you the best. Thanks very much, Dan, for being with us tonight. And do you have any closing remarks?
Really appreciate your work, Rick. Your knowledge on this stuff is just invaluable. Really think you do a great job with this, and I'm thrilled we have you here. I don't know if we have any final questions from our students who've been listening in.
Yeah, we got Danny, we got Nancy, I see Bobby, I see. Wait a minute, well, that was a whole different program. Anybody have any questions?
Right. If you have questions, feel free, but otherwise you can email or call, and we're happy to help you with anything. And after that, I guess we'll see you next time.
Appreciate you guys. Call me anytime too. See you later. Make it happen.